Okay, today I wanted to talk about something slightly different than normal. One thing I've been thinking a decent about as I've been watching the Blacklist is that seems to be there's a general amount, a decent amount of anxiety and tension that goes into these types of stories. And I get that. I think that's kind of the nature of television, and particularly American television. And I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about what you may call a meta story analysis. So this is kind of the greater story, the story of all stories kind of deal, where it's a bit odd, but it seems that by design, I would definitely clarify. So this is not an accident or anything like that. A lot of these stories, like the Blacklist, and we'll call. There's a few others, and I'll list them out. Let's go see. The Good Wife, I'm going to classify into that. 24 was definitely very, very much like that. NCIS, a little bit. A lot of the crime, and I'll kind of include a lot of the crime shows. Basically, they kind of follow all of this same pattern. Basically, Suits, very much so. I would say it kind of is a bit more of the post 2010. I would almost kind of say, yeah, like that 2010 and onward shows kind of follow this aspect a bit more, because what you kind of have is I would say, I don't know, maybe even 90s to 2000s. I'm not the best pop culture as far as TV shows. I watched a decent amount of TV, but I didn't watch them all. But basically what you kind of have is there's different style of TV shows where you have kind of what we'll call the hard episodic shows. So this would be Law and Order, basically all the Law and Orders. So there's SVU, Criminal Intent, and then Regular. All of these follow what I would say there's not really much as far as the overarching story. It's very, very minimal. It's very much episodic, and there is some small overarching episodes, but they're very grounded in reality, very much so. Probably I should steal NCIS over here. This is where NCIS comes in. Criminal Minds is a little bit in both, I think. I think it definitely suffers, or not suffers, follows in kind of the overarching plot a little bit more. But very much what you have is this kind of desire and rhythm for the show. Basically, what you do is you start with a murder. So here we go. The episodes are 41 to 43 minutes long. And basically what we've got here is we start with a murder. And then, of course, we have the investigation. We start to pick up the pieces. We start to see. We're introduced to, the cast of characters, basically the people in this life. They'll go through there. They'll get the cast of characters. Maybe they'll get, I'm kind of thinking, they'll get the autopsy reports. So they'll talk to Dr. Autopsy or Abby for NCIS or something like that. And you'll interview witnesses. There'll be a development. They'll find him. He'll escape, or they'll catch somebody, but it turns out they're not the real bad guy. It goes to something deeper, and you go to something deeper, and you find a guy, and he thinks it's going to be the guy. They'll have some personal character story, maybe developed here or something like that. They'll find a guy, but it turns out that this is not the guy who did it. And then it turns out it's this character that was introduced way back here. They'll find the person, and then the show ends, basically, right there. That's kind of what a lot of them follow. Law and Order, the original, that was kind of why that one was my favorite, is because it definitely seemed to kind of vary a little bit, because it was kind of like a two-part mystery. It was like a one-part mystery was the murder, and then the two-part was how do you convict them. And so you could have a lot of creativity and difference and variance in kind of the stories like that. But this is basically how it is. It's kind of hardcore, episodic. You started to see a little bit more, especially as I think the series went on later and later, kind of like overarching stories, because usually what you do is you basically have this times 20, and then the last two episodes, so episodes 21 and 22, or 23, 24, what are the last two episodes would be a two-parter, and that would be it. Bam. And it doesn't surprise me, because I think what it is basically, this is the TV cable, basically. This is the meta of TV cable, where it's very episodic. You can't really hope for anyone to watch stories or anything that are going to be that long. So that's the reason why I like Sopranos and The Wire and some of these shows. They're really kind of out there. They're outliers, basically. They're HBO. You have to kind of have a specialized show or a specialized story that takes them day by day from there, versus 95% of all the other shows. Let's see, what is it? Add some more. Monk, Psych. Let's see, what are the other murder ones? Burn Notice. Gosh, I always forget about Burn Notice. Burn Notice. All of these are very episodic. There's usually some sort of very loose overarching plot, but it doesn't really matter. You can kind of tell, because I think I watched the last episode of Monk, and it was just another mystery. It was the same thing. There was nothing. They didn't even do anything. They didn't even try to do anything different. They didn't do anything different. So what it is just this hardcore episodic lock. There is no overarching grand narrative. Now, what we start to see, especially as we get, I'm going to pick an arbitrary date, and 2010 seems like a good one. What we kind of have is, you see the advent of streaming services. So this is Netflix and co. So what you got is Netflix and co., which is Hulu, Amazon Prime, Disney, Peacock, Discovery, Paramount. You start to see, again, we're starting to get all these cable channels back again. And what you start to see then is a different sort of story. It kind of blends the two aspects that you could have. Because over here you could kind of have, we'll call it the episodic, basically. Episodic TV shows. And then we're going to have the, what would be a good name? Full story, maybe we'll call it. Basically, full story shows. So this would be something like The Sopranos, where there is stuff that happens in every day, but overall, the whole point of the show is that you watch, the whole show, basically. And then you have shows, so we kind of start here, and we start moving more to here. So you kind of have a bit of this one. And this is kind of where you start to see shows like, The Good Wife is one that I'm going to pick on a little bit, because I watched it, it was just on, and I was in the room, and I don't know what happened. And we ended up watching a few episodes, and it was kind of oddly addicting in some aspect. And it's like, anytime anything is that sort of addicting or anything, it's by design. So what you have, the type of story is, maybe you can have an hour. You can start to see a little bit more variance. But the main point is that you see is there's an expectation that the audience is going to be carried through and follow the story to the next episode, basically. And so what you have, then you get more recaps. You get a lot more of that. And then what you get is this layering of stories. We'll call it a layering of stories. So what this is basically they'll have usually two sets of characters. So we'll have characters A and characters B. And this can switch. And basically they'll have two plot lines. So this one we'll call it case 1, and then case 2. And then actually oftentimes we'll have a character C, which will be something else. Basically, this could be the characters or some sort of development, anything like that. That's what it could be. So this is kind of two. And what you have then is to create the episode, to craft an episode. What you're going to do is you're going to have case 1, and it's going to go here. And then you're going to have case 2, and it's going to go here. And then case 1. And then maybe in the middle we'll have, or maybe lace throughout it to kind of tie these two. Maybe case 3 or option 3 is going to kind of exist here in the middle, basically, to kind of pad it more or less from here. So that way, what you're having is there's this never rest. There's this never resting aspect. So what you have is you can have one runs into the other, to the other, to the other, to the other. And then the interesting thing is what you have here is this is the end of the show. Maybe it goes back and forth and a few other times. But then what you have is one of the cases is going to develop into your hook for the next TV show, because the TV show always has to end on a cliffhanger. This is something I've definitely noticed with the Blacklist, where it's kind of almost annoying, because it's just why does it even break for a new episode? Why not have that cliffhanger in the middle of the TV show and then I can just watch? But obviously not, because it's built around this model of TV where they don't ever expect you to be watching for more than an episode, but they're trying to keep you to watching more and more. And so what you do is you always have a cliffhanger. The Hardy Boys, I think, does this pretty well, where basically every chapter ends on a sort of cliffhanger. And then what they're doing is trying to drag you to the next chapter, the next one, to the next one, to the next one. So this has a long history of this. But basically, you have A and B and C kind of interwoven. And what you then have is you'll have one plot line end, or it'll grow. So what that means, by, let's say, this plot line will end, so they'll resolve this one. But then it turns out B just continues on, and it turns out that someone else is behind it, or someone else is there, or something else is going on. And then this leads into the next episode. And then the next episode, you have B, and then it quickly turns into, B2, basically. It's kind of developing from here. And then the next step, and then you have A and B2 and C, and they kind of interlace. And usually what it is it's this 3 plot line story where basically you can usually expect 2 of these to be resolved by the end of it. And then one of them is not going to be resolved. And this last plot line is what takes you to the next episode. And what it does is there's this feeling that there's no rest, basically. There's no rest, no ease into it. What you always are left then is, while it should be a satisfying ending, we got the bad guy, the lawyers, we did justice, etc., all that good stuff. But there is no rest, because all it does is immediately jump into the next case, or the next thing we need to do, because, we saved this person, but then it turns out this happened, and this happened, or, you did something. Maybe this was always, for The Good Wife, it was always very much, and same thing with Suits and a lot of these lawyer shows, is you'll do something for the case, but then the action basically will reverberate and kind of echo, and it'll come back to haunt them. Dun dun. And then that's what it kind of deals with, the fallout of, hey, I did what I had to do to win this case, but you did X, Y, Z, all that from there. And that's what you kind of have from there. And that's what builds this sort of thing. So this is what I mean when you have this anxiety and tension. And again, Blacklist also definitely follows this one. Maybe not. I say 24 kind of. I'm not going to include that one because that one, again, earlier 2000s. But Blacklist and Suits and Good Wife, and there's probably a number of others that I'm not really talking about because it doesn't really matter. You get the examples. You can kind of start to notice this as you see them more and more. But what it does is it just creates this anxiety and tension, which I don't know. I don't know what to take with it, or what greater picture to mean with it, or anything like that. But it's just interesting that a lot of these shows, there is no rest, basically. There is nothing like that. There's no happy conclusion. It wouldn't surprise me if this is the reason why, we're starting to see a lot of other shows from other countries, slice of life or anime or something like that, really take off. It's because they don't have this sort of tension and anxiety. They don't have this aspect where there is no rest, where you basically, in order to find solace, you kind of have to watch the whole season, basically. And even then, the season's going to end on but what happens to that one character who got away, who's sure to become a main character, a main antagonist, in the next season or something like that. And that's kind of where it is and what I've noticed so far. So, I think that's all I've got. So I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you in the next one.